All right. I believe now, in theory, everything's going and everything's doing, and who knows. So, wherever you are watching this, just let me know if you can hear me or see anything. I have no idea. It's a slightly different setup than last time. I'm rambling. It's fine. It's nice to be back. It's good to be here. This is the Writer's Chat for November the 12th. So, let's do the thing. Yeah, let's do the thing.
And now we'll see how good you are.
Do you mind telling me what this is all about, mister?
He'll teach you everything. What the?
Language and writing were made available.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
Fight the Empire!
So anything that you could do to help would be very helpful.
All right. So, yeah, here we are. Welcome back. It's good to be here. It's been a minute. It still feels weird. I have to say, it still feels weird to be doing this way. I was so used to Ecamm and being on the Mac and everything just being like two buttons and not really being aware that it could have been so much more than two buttons. But here we are all the same with way more than two buttons and way more bells and whistles. And this is nice. So far, I don't think anything is melting down. So far, I don't think anything is a problem. And so far, I don't think there's like, I'm not doing anything wrong. There's no error messages. So, yay, we're doing good. Yeah, I think so. That's lovely. That just sounds really nice. So how about we do an opening? Ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, friends, writers, makers, doers, dreamers, pantsers, plotters, screenwriters, scribblers, tweet exodus people, anti-fascists, comrades, soap dealers. I said comrades already. Oh, well. Soap dealers, vendors, sex workers, cosplay enthusiasts, roofers, landscapers, anybody who's ever had to nail two things together, anybody who's ever been in a situation where they know their life is meant to be better, but the amount of inertia you need to change it is terrifying. And most importantly, you guys, the audience. See what I did there? I changed it up. That's mostly just for today because I already said the word comrades twice. But, okay. Hi, this is the Writer's Chat for November the 12th. And I don't know where you are. Where I am, it is a cold and blustery day. So forgive me if I'm all up on this microphone and cold. Hopefully, we'll have a good conversation and we'll warm the hell up in here. So what this is, if you don't know, if you're new to this, if you're new to me, hi, I'm John. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for coming. I'm a writing coach and an editor. I help people write better. It's in the name. And I answer questions from all different corners of all different comers of all different sides and sizes of social media about writing stuff, all kinds of stuff, books, screenplays, film, everything. And I want to give you some answers. I want to give you some tools. I want to make the mysterious, I don't know how to do this, into something actionable, something useful, something doable. It's really important to me that people learn how to communicate, and now, especially now, learn how to make effective art and use that art to keep themselves afloat in times where the stormy seas seem to be at their roughest. Because the world's going to need two things going forward for a while. It's going to need people looking out for other people as opposed to people looking to step over other people, and it's going to need art and your voice to communicate and reach out and connect to one another, because without connection, none of this happens, period. And I would rather be in a world that is fighting its way back to connection as opposed to just trying to survive the number of things pulling us apart. That's important to me. There's your small plug for the day. Be kind to others. Now, shall we do some questions? Let's get started with question number 1. What are 1 to 3 things I think are important when you're writing comedy? And I think the easiest answer is you have to be funny. And that doesn't really help. I mean, it's accurate. You do have to be funny when writing a comedy, but you got to understand what funny is. Now, part of that is subjective. Part of that is you don't know how your audience is going to respond to you saying a thing. Maybe they laugh a lot. Maybe they don't laugh at all. Whatever. Part of that's out of your control. Can't really do anything about it. But what you can do and what you can manage and what you can do something about is understanding that a lot of comedy is framed around the idea of expectation and either denial of expectation. You don't get what you want or what you think is going to happen, or you get what you want with a cost, whether that cost is a complication or whether that cost is a different circumstance. You get it. And understanding that formula, understanding that idea of here's the thing the audience is going to want, we're either going to give it to them slightly or not give it to them for reasons. Understanding that and using that as a way to lens most comedy is going to really help you. So let's call that thing number 1. Thing number 2 when you're writing comedy is you don't need to over-explain it. If your impulse is that I don't think you're going to understand my joke, so I'm going to start over-talking it, and I'm going to break it down and really lay out a very long setup so that you absolutely, positively can't miss when the punchline arrives, you're missing the point, because you don't need comedy is informational, but comedy is not technical and instructional. So if I'm telling you a joke, I'm not telling you all the hyper specifics. I'm not telling you all the details. I'm trusting you to have a broad enough picture from the details I'm giving you so that when we get to the joke, we are focusing on the fun part, on the silly part, on the part that, subverts that expectation like we talked about. So item number 2, do not over-explain. Even if you think your audience isn't going to get it, even if you think your audience is young or stupid or, clueless or whatever, do not over-explain. Now, that doesn't mean swing the other way and radically under-explain everything. You don't need to go that far either. We want to avoid those extremes wherever possible. But, yeah, you need to not over-explain things. And for a lot of writers who are trying very hard to be funny, this is how try hard shows up. Over-explanation, over-detailing, kind of quickly chewing through the stuff in order to get to the fun part. And then here's the third thing. You have to slow down. Not radically, not slowly crawl along, but you've got to go slow. I think too often writers, when they get nervous, whether they're writing comedy or whether they're writing action or whether they're writing anything, there's a want to keep the story moving. They're afraid that if the story slows down, that the reader is going to abandon them somehow. And again, and I know I've said this before, but I'll repeat myself, the reader isn't looking for reasons to leave. The reader is looking for reasons to stay. And that is a really, really, really important concept, because what this has to do and what this has to be about is you don't have to constantly keep trying to earn their attention. You've got their attention. Assume you've kept their attention and then keep giving them reasons to stay there. They're not gonna scatter away, when the lights come on. They're not gonna run at the first sign of danger. But you do have to, take your time and give them something to imagine. Give them something to feel. Give them something to see in their mind. Give them something to engage with. And when we rush, even if we're trying to be funny or like multiply the funny, because one funny thing leads to another funny thing, leads to a third funny thing, you end up in a situation where you're just not quite being funny because you're moving too fast and you're not setting anything up. Slow down just a little. Now, in your head while you're doing this, it's going to feel monumentally slow. It's going to feel like it's glacial and that nothing is happening. But I promise you, that's just your anxiety driving. That's just you worrying about a thing because it's important to you and you want to do a good job, but you've got no accurate sense. You've got a subjective sense instead of an objective sense as to how things are going. So slow down, take your time, and it's going to be all right. Those are the three things I immediately think about when I think about comedy, even before we dive too deep into the idea of like just how subjective is it and just how like well do you have to know your audience in advance in order to do the things, because you do and you don't. Some of it matters, but you can't make everything important. Oh my God, you have to know the audience. You have to know the joke. You have to land the timing. You have to get it all right. 55 jokes in a row. You just can't. That's unrealistic. That's like, if we were taking it out of comedy, that's like saying I have to write 55 action scenes that are the best action scene one after the other. It's just not possible. But I think if we slow down and we focus on just less detail but more effective use of the detail we have, and then we, try to keep the idea focused and clear without too much extra bell and whistle, and with, knowing that our reader is subjective and not everybody's going to laugh at everything, I think you put yourself in a position to really have an effective comedic approach, because your voice, your authorial voice and your narrative voice together will do a lot to help you come across with what is funny based on how you deliver it. But that would be a fourth thing if we got a fourth thing. But for now, slow down, take your time, don't go over detail, and understand that not everybody's going to get everything the way you want. Totally worth thinking about, but it's a great first question, and on we go. So, question number 2 is, how broad is the genre label fantasy? Now, I don't know if you've listened to today's podcast, which is available wherever you get your podcasts. Go listen to, search for John Helps You Write Better. It's really good. I'm biased. Today's was all about genre and how genre isn't just the label. The genre also has conventions and other parts. But the label's pretty broad, real broad, because fantasy encompasses all different kinds of stuff. Fantasy, just the word fantasy by itself, covers high fantasy and medieval fantasy and dark fantasy and urban fantasy and historical fantasy and romantasy and historical fiction fantasy, which is not the same thing, and, horror fantasy and erotic fantasy and sexual fantasy and, poetic fantasy, which isn't really a thing so much anymore. Fantasy's huge. Space fantasy. It's massive. You can get away with a lot. The criteria, if you're curious, what makes a fantasy, is that it is some amount of deviation, some amount of separate stuff from normal mundane life. That doesn't mean it has to be magical. It can be. That's magical fantasy. But it just has to be different than like our reality. If it is our reality unchanged, like it's just we made up some characters and they're going about their day doing whatever, it's not really fantasy. You can argue, you can push your glasses up your nose and get shoved into a locker for totally arguing that, well, I made up characters, so that's a fantasy because they're not real people. Yeah, sure, I guess. Technically, and I know technically is the best kind of right to be, but yeah, but usually fantasy has to do with some amount of deviation from normal, I'm making air quotes, normal reader existence. But anything beyond that, totally roomy, spacious, you're fine. You've got there's plenty of space under this umbrella for you to have the vast majority of stuff that is fantasy. However, and I'm going to caution this will probably come up more over the course of later questions. You don't only want to write fantasy. Like, it's not wrong. You can be a fantasy author, but don't just stop at that label. Try to drill down to a subgenre. Try to drill down to like a smaller version. Like you write fantasy, yeah, but you're an urban fantasy writer, or you write horror fantasy, or you're a romantasy author. Find that subdivision, because it's going to be a lot easier for you to use that subdivision as a more effective label for your work. Because, oh, you write horror fantasy. Now, all of a sudden, instead of just being fantasy, big and broad like a billboard, now we're starting to zero in on who you'd want to talk to and how you want to talk to them and how you want to pitch your story and what kind of things the reader can expect with your story. That matters. So broad might be nice for labels, but more specific is always preferable. But fantasy, just like romance, are huge labels under which a bajillion things sit. And there's even overlap in some cases, but that's not really important. Do not get hung up on just, it's fantasy, and then as if that's like a permission slip to just do whatever. It's not, but it's fantasy. Big label. On we go. Question 3. What are some things to avoid in titles? Okay, you ready? Here's a list. 1, excessive punctuation. That includes exclamation points, colons, dashes, parentheses, all those things. If you've got to press a shift key on a keyboard other than a capital letter, you probably want to avoid it in a title. Other things, lengthy phrases that give away significant explanations. And I know that's a non-English thing. I know that in a lot of Korean, Japanese, some Indian programming and writing and books, you get titles that are a bit more explicative, titles that sort of spell out what the thing is rather than just punching it like, I'll do a bad example. Instead of saying Breaking Bad, you would do like, Man Turns to Life of Crime. Part of that's a translation issue. Part of that is just an experiential issue. But in general, you want to have a title that is not a mouthful to say. In general, you want a title that is engaging, that a reader can look at and go, huh, that sounds interesting. It doesn't have to tell me everything, because to get that detail, I'll just read the thing. But it has to be at least something to give me a poke, a button press, an interest moment, an ooh, if you want a not technical term. So 1, avoid excessive punctuation. 2, avoid lengthy explanations of stuff. 3, the other end of the pendulum, don't be vague. Don't be really vague just because you're trying really hard to be witty, because you're really trying hard to be like, I want to show you how smart I am. So I'm going to call this thing, let me think of a really obnoxious one. I'm going to call this thing Lampshade. And instead it's a political thriller. And by the way, the bug in the president's room is tucked in the lampshade, and that's the connection to the title. And it doesn't immediately make sense, and it doesn't really feel political thriller, but you have to be a careful reader, and that kind of obnoxious tone really wrecks a title. Third thing, you don't need subtitles. I don't mean subtitles like the text that shows up at the bottom. I mean like subheadings as subtitles. So, Lampshade, book 1 of the political thriller series, a story about Kevin and Frank in politics, is too long of a title. And the longer and weaker your title is, the less quality your product is going to assume to have. That's why movie titles aren't like 1 million words unless it's like an adaptation of something. Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King is an adaptation of a text. That's why that title's that long. But other stuff is not that. And that's fine. Keep your title short keep it engaging, keep it clear. And when I say clear, I don't mean like detailed. I mean like make it clear that it is a title that you are intending to say something provocative with. Those are some great title pieces of advice. And beyond that, practice. Come up with, don't just take the first idea that pops in your head. Draft lengthy lists and pick and choose. Oh, I like this. I don't like that. The book is about this, so I want a title that feels like that. It's okay to sit down and really like take time, like think it through. Titles matter. I will tell you, I'm not great at titles, but I can spot bad titles. I think just about anybody can. But punctuation, lengthy titles, and way too many subdivisions within a title will all sink you, because it's really hard to share it. It's really hard to engage with it. And it's less interesting as an overall result. That's just what I think. Shall we move on? I have no idea. My audience, if any, is about to get an ad in 10 seconds. So I don't know if anybody's here. I'm tempted to press the button and ask you if you have any questions. But again, I don't know if anybody's here, and I don't entirely know how long this ad break is. So what I will do to fill this ad break, at least until a question shows up or somebody comes in here, I will tell you that one of the best things you can do, especially this week and in the coming week, is go check on people. Drop them a text message, write them an email. Hey, just wanted to see how you were doing. Haven't heard from you in a little while. You don't have to get, super deep. You don't have to immediately like throw yourself into like, I have to help you. But just reach out. Let them know that they are not alone. Let them know that, you see them in some capacity. That goes a long way, because a lot of people, for a lot of reasons, are going through some stuff right now. Some good, some bad, all over the place. A lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension, a lot of anger, a lot of hostility. It's not your job to solve all those problems. It's not your job to fix that in everybody. It is your job, however, to show up for the people you care about and let them know that you see them and that you're present with them. And if they want to talk, you'll listen. If they need a thing, you'll do your best. You don't have to go out of your way. You don't have to belabor the point. But it is absolutely a good idea if you were to spend some time just reaching out and looking after each other. If you want to go the extra step, sure, go, donate things to a food bank, or make sure, the homeless people, the unhoused people in your area have socks and hats. It's okay to care. That's a really, critical thing here. It is okay to care. Just something to think about. On we go to question 4. If pacing sorts itself out naturally while writing, why do people worry so much about it? First of all, yes, pacing most of the time, making big hand gestures, most of the time will sort itself out naturally while you're writing. Because much like momentum in a car, you don't have to really worry about it until it becomes a problem, like when you're going to crash into something or when traffic is stop and start. Most of the time, though, the car is in motion because that's physics. That's okay. That's just fine. It's hang on. I got a question in chat and I don't have it popping up here. Sorry. I'm getting to it now. What about being unsure in which semi-genre, don't call it a semi-genre, it's a subgenre. What about being unsure in which subgenre your fantasy belongs? Ask somebody. The question is to ask. So, hang on, we're going back. Here's what you do. You don't know where you fit under the big fantasy umbrella. You know you're in fantasy, but you don't know the subdivision. What's your story? Like, when you say, here is what my story is about, the first things you grab onto are probably the indicators for your subgenre. So if you say, oh, my story is about a lady who travels through time in order to fight evil scientists. Sure. And she gets trapped in the past. I don't know, I'm making a story up. Then that is immediately alternate history or alternate timeline fantasy because you're dealing with somebody traveling through time. Those small divisions, those small divisions are easiest to find based on how you describe your story. So if you describe it poorly, if you don't do enough to make it stand out, if you just say, "Oh, I'm writing a fantasy story because it's got people in it," and you stop there, you don't go the next two steps, it's going to be really hard for you to know on what to focus on and on where to take the story and move it forward and what people are looking for. I want to apologize for completely missing this because I got everything else working, but I haven't got the chat working. I apologize. Thank you for being here, person. I appreciate you. I appreciate your question. So, summarize. When you talk about your story, whatever it is, the words you use in addition to "I'm writing a story about ... your subgenre is in there. It's a story about thing. That thing, somehow, some way, is a subgenre. Ask somebody. There's a whole list. You can find it. It'll be okay. Good question. We're going back to question 4. Pacing naturally sorts itself out while writing. Why do people worry about it? Okay, here's why. Here's what's up. So we worry about pacing because we don't know how the reader is engaging with our stuff. We don't know if they like it. We're not getting any feedback. It's kind of this, we throw it out into the world and we just see what happens kind of vibe. And that happens. That's just how shit is. But pacing is a thing we can control. And when we feel like we're out of control with something, we start grabbing on the stuff we can control in order to try to use the stuff to fix the stuff we can't. People worry about pacing because they think that they would have a better response than they're getting if they had better pacing or better this or better that or better characters or better dialogue or better, and they start tearing themselves apart and tearing their work apart and overthinking everything. Because again, they're trying to solve what they think is a problem, even though there's not necessarily evidence that there's a problem. People, creatives in particular, lack support. There's not enough people saying, "Hey, you're doing a great job. You're doing good. Keep going." And there's not enough people saying like, "Hey, here's how you do the thing you want to do better." There used to be, but thanks to algorithms and a million other factors, that's just less popular. And or straight laughed at and ignored. But we worry about pacing because we're trying to control something else. Usually that control, what the thing we're trying to control is like audience response and reception, how well everybody's going to dig it. But pacing itself will take care of itself. If you're writing effectively, if you've got, good scene construction, if you're moving the plot forward, if you've got engaging dialogue, if you've kept the story moving and not just kind of moving in a circle and dragging ass all the way around, it's going to be okay. Pacing will naturally sort itself out. That doesn't mean it'll be perfect. You might have to go back after the first draft and edit. You might have to cut some scenes because it's just, I didn't need the thing in the scene in the deli or the bedroom or whatever. You might have to cut it because it just doesn't help anymore. And that's fine. But pacing, the movement of event to event to event, will sort itself out once you've got a strong enough structure in place. If you're one of those writers who's just kind of making up everything as you go, and there's big gaps between all the times you're sitting down to write, I swear to you there's going to be pacing problems because there's a pacing problem in your output. If you're not doing this fairly consistently, if you're not doing this organized, ideally both organized and consistently, pacing is probably a factor because much like starting a car, I think would probably be the easiest example. Starting a car and then pressing both the gas and the brake pedal at the same time, or coming back to a thing that you've not done in a long time, it feels a little rusty. It's sort of like me with streaming. It just kind of like I can do it, but getting there a little bit dicey, a little bit messy. So pacing sorts itself out while we're busy trying to micromanage other things. The best fix for it is to just focus on doing the best job you can with the thing you're writing. Whether that's character or plot or world building or whatever, just make the writing the best and it'll be okay. Pacing really will work itself out. On we go. Question 5. What is a, quote, unclear speech verb? Also in quotes. That's a technical term, unclear speech verb. You'll get that from an editor. That's where you've got a verb that is being used to communicate speech, but itself is not a thing, a verb, where people make mouth noises. So, for instance, if you have somebody talking and they're, I don't know, bored, frustrated, whatever, you might have, them say, this is a really hard day. Kevin sighed. Sigh is it's a breath sound. It is not a speech verb. You do not communicate you communicate in sighs, but you don't, it's not the same as talking. It's sighing. It's a different thing. An unclear speech verb is where a non-speaking verb, yell, shout, scream, say, whisper, murmur, that kind of stuff, becomes a speech verb. Sigh, breathed, exhaled, groan. Well, groan, there's a little bit of wiggle room on groan, but groan is technically an unclear speech verb. They're not automatically bad. Let's be clear. Don't panic. They're not automatically bad. But if you're using them so often because you're afraid that said is boring or that said isn't like good, I'm making air quotes, good enough, you're missing the point. It doesn't matter. The fact that you have, Susan, ululated, or Tom hollered. Sure. I mean, don't hang the very critical thing you need to communicate on the verb in the dialogue tag, because the reader's not going to remember the verb. They're going to remember the dialogue the character said. And you want to make sure that with your speech verbs, it's clear and active, because an unclear speech verb sucks. It's hard to understand how a human being made that noise. Or more importantly, if, God, it's been such a hard day, Kevin sighed. Okay. Is that Kevin said the words and then Kevin sighed? Like, it's been such a hard day. Two actions, speaking, sighing, or not. That clarity matters, because you as a writer are trying to put a movie in my brain. And if you're mushing everything together, it's not really clear to me. And I need it to be clear because I want to watch this movie in my brain. So an unclear speech verb makes this job harder. And it's an easy fix. It's a really easy fix. Every sentence is a camera. Every sentence puts part of a movie in the reader's brain. Either it adds new information. Here's a thing you haven't seen before. Now you're seeing it. Or it expands on existing information. Here's a thing we talked about already. Here's more detail about it. Every sentence is a camera. Your speech verbs are important-ish. They matter because they help us communicate things, but don't get hung up on them. And certainly don't go crazy. If you go way over the top with them, you end up with one of my favorite sentences of all time, where Tom says, "I'm coming," he ejaculated. That's, delightful, but not the best case for, speech verbs. Be precise in your word choice. Paint a picture for the reader. Put a movie in their brain. On we go. Question 6. What is a walled garden, and is it good or bad for writers? Walled garden is in quotes. A walled garden is any platform, service, object, business, technology, stuff, software, thing that keeps writers within and makes it sound like being without or outside is bad. Platforms do this in particular. A walled garden that's a platform wants you to stay on the platform, wants you to keep engaging with it, wants you to get other people within the platform to engage with it, and wants you to not go elsewhere. Don't leave. Don't take your stuff and go somewhere else. Stay here, behind the wall, in the walled garden, and it's good enough. That's bad. That's objectively bad. It's good at the time because, hey, I'm on a platform. I'm doing a thing. I'm engaging. I've got friends. I've got this sense of community. I'm not alone. People like my stuff if I'm using it, whatever, da-da-da. I'm getting numbers. Numbers go up on a screen. It's cool. That's good, right? Yeah, sort of, kind of, in a simple dopamine sort of way. Press bar, get food pellet. But there's a whole, other world out there beyond the wall. And it's not the wilderness that the people on the inside want you to think it is. It's just over there. It's just different. Walled gardens are bad because they restrict rather than encourage. Let's say we'll do a non-platform example. Let's say we're doing software, right? You'll see this a lot in terms of I'll use a software thing. I use Scrivener. Scrivener's great. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. But here's the problem with Scrivener. Editorially, to do my job, Scrivener's terrible. It is impossible to edit in Scrivener effectively. You have to export your file to a different kind of file in order for me to get a copy that I can do something with. But you love Scrivener. Oh my God, Scrivener makes it great to write. Yeah, Scrivener's great for writing. It's terrible for making a book. That's not heresy or anything. It's just how it is. It just sucks. Walled gardens are bad. Walled gardens happen most frequently in platforms. Oh no, stay here, do this thing, stay here, play with my toys. Do not go over there and use those toys. Do not leave me, do not abandon me. It's like my cat with abandonment issues. He'll just cry if you don't tell him you're leaving when you leave. Don't leave the platform, stay here. You have friends, they click buttons, they do nothing. It's just a click of a button here. It doesn't matter. It doesn't translate into the real world. You're not gaining any skills. You're not gaining any progress. You're not doing anything. But we're here. We're safe. We're in this little place. We all log into this website and we're just here. That's bad because you want to be a writer. There's a whole planet of humans who can engage with your book. Here, let's go one step further. It could be a book. It could go out and reach other humans. But the longer you stay in a walled garden and just say, I got to stay here. It's safe here. I know what to do here. The longer you do that, the longer you hold your craft back, the longer you make it harder for you in the long term, the longer it'll take you to reach your goal, the less quality you will do. You will end up being a big fish in a little pond with tiny fins when you could be a big fish in a big-ass pond way over there. Walled gardens, bad. Don't do it. Don't do it. I understand being scared. I understand, feeling uncomfortable because it's a nice small space. But eventually, it's time to go look beyond the wall. Hope lies out there in the darkness amongst the monsters. It'll be okay. Don't fall for it. It's real tempting, especially the stuff that's free. Oh, join our platform. It doesn't cost anything. And then just post your shit here. Great. Except it's not. Because there's a whole other planet of humans who might enjoy your stuff. And they might enjoy it even more if you got better at it. But that's scary. Maybe expensive. Maybe it takes time. Maybe it's just easier. I'm making air quotes. Easier to do it this way. And that's how the walled garden keeps you in. That's why it's bad. It doesn't encourage you to grow. It just encourages you to do. And that's a thing. So yeah, bad for writers. Don't do it. Don't do it. Shall we go on? Shall we keep moving? Question number 7. Let me just stop and check to see if anybody else has questions because I don't have any notifications. This is miserable. I desperately have to fix this in the long run. Yeah, I can't tell. I can't even open it on my phone while I'm doing it. So if you have questions, let's just cover it this way. If you have questions, communicate in chat and somebody will relay it to me until I can figure out how to fix that part of it. It's a tin can and string system. Sorry, guys. So question 7. Do you really always need an editor? Now, disclaimer, I'm an editor. Second disclaimer, I'm good at what I do. Now, let's answer the question. Yes, you always need one. Always, 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 always. I don't care. I don't care if you're an editor. I don't care if you really like the library. I don't care if you have a ton of friends. I don't care if you just use some piece of bullshit software. Don't care. You need a human being to come to you and edit your human being art. Software has shortcomings. Software, Grammarly in particular, does not read for nuance. Does not always get it right. It can technically apply a flat rule, but there are times those rules can be broken for the sake of better narrative. It does not understand certain styles of writing, certain voices, certain structures. It just doesn't do that. But you need an editor. You need a human being to come in and go, oh, I will act as an intermediary between your story and the rest of the world. I will assist in making this thing, this project, this broadcast clearer. I will remove the static. I will find the errors and help you get better so that your best thing goes out into the world. Yes, you really always need an editor. The two most common complaints are editing is expensive. We'll talk about that later. And editing is hard. It feels like school because it's somebody yelling at me. Well, that's just a shitty editor. Sorry. An editor is there to help you do what you want to do better, in the same way that going to the gym and possibly getting a trainer is going to help you work out more effectively. Do you desperately need, can you go to the gym without one? Yeah. But if you're trying to do something specific, like, oh, I want to, really get into shape effectively, or I want to rehab an injury, or I want to train for this thing, getting help helps. It makes a difference. It makes a huge difference. And if you're, we'll talk about the payment part of it later, but it's more flexible than you think. And the issue of, well, I don't have any money, so I can't get it. That's the question that's coming later. That shouldn't be a barrier. And whoever keeps telling you that it is a barrier is doing you a disservice. An editor will help you, period. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you're writing. I've been doing this job more than half my life. I've been doing this job 26 years. I can, speaking just experientially, chances are you're writing a thing I've probably seen some part before, right? Like, not that many new things under the sun. Most editors have some experience. They'll help you. If you don't like your editor, go find a new one. You want to, find 2 or 3 shitty ones? Great. Now you know what not to do. Now you know where to, what to avoid in the future. But yes, you always need one. Their job is to help you. You don't have to do this thing alone. You don't have to suffer with it. You don't have to drag ass through it. You don't need to torture yourself like that. Go get help. It helps. On we go. Question 8. When you've got a scene with 3 or more speakers, when you've got a scene with 3 or more speakers, how do you avoid constantly using proper names? Well, okay. First of all, try not to have that many scenes with more than 3 speakers, because at the end of the day, not all of them can talk at the same time. And also, you can only write so much at a time, like on a line physically. You can give the impression that multiple people are speaking. You can use dashes. You can break lines of dialogue up. There are visual ways to organize that information. But it's mostly something the reader has to hold in their head. And one of the ways you're going to give them that is by clearly illustrating who is speaking when, and this is the important part, making sure that it's not just dialogue on the page. Make sure that it's not just quotation marks, what the people say, quotation marks, and, he said, Bob said, Kevin said, John said. Don't just do that. That's going to be part of it. That's going to be a lot of what you write. But the more speakers you add to a conversation, the more critical it is to include information that is beyond just speaking. You need to talk about what people are doing with their bodies, what they're doing with their hands, the faces people make. Do they fidget? Do they turn? Do they look away? Is there, do they tap their fingers on the table? Do they pet the cat? Do they do this? Do they do that? Think about how, I know the dialogue is important. I'm not saying the talking is not important, but the talking doesn't exist in a vacuum. The talking isn't just sound, and the movie in my head doesn't suddenly go black. There's people, bodies, hands, eyes, faces, sound. There's loads of different factors, not just talking. So how do you avoid constantly using proper nouns? You cheat. I don't know how else to explain it to you. So since we can only focus on one character at a time, at least per clause in a sentence, because that's what we have commas and other parts of sentences for, you just clarify when there's a speaker, and you clarify when there's a hearer, a recipient, and you really are only ever moving between two people at a time, A to B, A to C, C to B, C to A, back and forth, whatever. And if you get into like A, B, C, and D, 5 people, 4 people, 7 people, whatever, it's only ever done in pieces, because 7 people can't all talk at once. Because if 7 people are speaking all at once, 7 people can't, or 6 people can't hear. So you've just got to break it down into smaller, digestible one-on-ones. It's just going to be a lot of them intertwined and tangled together. And then because it's one-on-ones, you don't always need to use proper nouns unless you have to shift the focus on a per-sentence level, where John is talking to Kevin, and then all of a sudden Frank spills his beer. Then, we bring up Frank. That's his proper noun. So we bring up Frank because he does that. But we can disguise that sentence. We don't always have to start the sentence with the name. John is talking to Kevin. Crash. Both men turn to see Frank picking up his spilled beer bottle. Loads of different ways to disguise the proper noun. You just don't always have to start the sentence with it. You cheated. It's a good question. On we go. Question 9. What do you do as a coach when you run into writers who swear they don't need you? Well, if you asked me this question 2 or more years ago, my answer would be cry. I'd get very upset, very, very upset when people would get real defiant or stubborn about, like, I don't need coaching, I don't need an editor, I'm going to do my own thing. I would spend a lot of mental resources and a lot of time trying to sell myself, trying to, like, make it sound like, oh, I can help you. Like, I'm begging this person I don't know. I'm begging them for attention. It's exhausting. And at the end of the day, they still say no. And I've done all this extra labor to try to get them to like me, all this extra labor to get them engaged. Over the last 2 years or so, I've stopped doing a lot of that because I'm tired and I don't want to do that anymore. So there are some times that still happens. You can ask around, absolutely, positively. You can totally ask around. Where I still like, oh, somebody new's coming. Let's try and get them involved. Let's try to get them invested. But by and large, okay, if you say you don't need me, fine. I will be right here when you do. I'll be right here if you change your mind later. I'm not going anywhere. But I no longer feel a need to stop and justify what I do. What I do is what I do. I'm very good at it. I can help damn near anybody who's willing to be helped. I can't make you want to be helped, though. You gotta. That's your half of this exchange. You gotta come to the experience willing to learn, rather than doing that like white dude thing of like crossed arms. All right, prove yourself to me. Like I'm old. I don't want to do that. I got better shit to do. The important thing, the really critical thing, is that I'm more confident that I can help you. I can do a lot. I'm pretty flexible. So if you get real cranky about it and you get real pissy about it, like, oh, I don't need help because reason. All right, cool. I'm going to go have a snack now. See you later. And on my day goes, and, I don't really think twice. Here, I'll give you an example. So a whole bunch of new people found me the other day, last week. I don't know if they found a podcast episode or a chat or whatever, but they found me and they start signing up to the newsletters and this, that, and the other. And they, all very positive, no jerks or anything. No real, nobody was a Nazi in disguise or anything. But they were just, they're just numbers on a page. They're sign-ups on a newsletter. They're people who click subscribe on a YouTube channel. Fine. Do I need them? Do I need to be like, oh man, I gotta pay that bill? It would be really nice if one of them paid for 30 minutes of help or needed a book edited. Yeah, it'd be awesome, because then I could pay that bill and not have to worry about food in December and January. That'd be great. But at the same time, I don't want to go out of my way to try and get this new person to immediately oh my God, John, you're the answer to my narrative creative problem. Not because I'm lazy. I'm not. It's just that I don't want to chase a thing that I don't think will pan out. I think that's the big reason. I think that's the big thing why I really stopped. I got better at sort of sussing out who was going to stick around and who was just going to run away for whatever reason. So now what do? Go have a snack. And apparently there was another ad break. So let's see if there are any questions. Anybody? There's a 7 or 8 second delay between me saying that and somebody typing, but I don't know. So in the interim, I'm getting a mouthful of water, and I will tell you another thing you can do to help people in your area. So last time we talked about just checking in, just writing them a note, right? Now we're going to go one step further. Hang on. There's a question. My ad break ends in 45 seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this. I'm going to finish this, and then I'm going to answer this question because it's a really good question, but I want to make sure it doesn't get lost in an ad. So other thing you can do to help, you can anticipate people just a little bit. You know your neighbors. You know where they're going and what they're doing more or less. Monday is trash day, so, they're going to have their trash cans out. Move their trash cans nearer to their house. Do that for them. Your neighbor, has snow, go shovel some of their sidewalk. Anticipate some needs and try to meet them. Just small stuff. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to go I also got this and this and this. No, just look at what people are experiencing. See if you can help them do a better job. See if you can contribute to making their day better. Help them carry groceries. Help them, do they need a ride somewhere? Just offer to give a shit. It makes a difference. All right. Question. What would I tell an insecure new writer? That's an awesome question. All right. Here's what I would tell you, insecure new writer. You cannot mess this up. You can't mess it up. There is nothing you can write. Nothing. Even if you wrote the most offensive, nasty, mean, hateful thing in the world, there is nothing you could write that can't be undone. It might not be the easiest undoing process. You might have to, depending on what it is you write that needs fixing, it might be a lot of fixing. You might need to start all over from the beginning, but that doesn't mean you messed up. That just means you got to, what not work, what didn't work, and now you got to do something different. You can't mess this up. Everything you write is a draft until you're happy with it. Now, you're going to have to learn that at some point, you're going to have to be happy with imperfection, but you can be imperfect and still be liked. You can be imperfect and still be loved. You can be imperfect and still have an audience. You can be imperfect and still be successful. There are loads of authors who not everybody universally likes, Oh, I don't like that guy. He's, he writes this. I don't read that. Okay, but there's somebody out there who does and they like him. If you're new and you're insecure and you don't know if your writing is any good, if that is the issue at the heart of this, no one's ever sat down and been like, hey, person, let's talk about your writing in a non-threatening, positive way. Here, come ask me. I will be very happy to tell you specifically, this is what you're doing well. This is what you're doing not so well. Here's how to work on the stuff you're not doing well. I do this for a living. It takes very little time and is not a bother to me. As a new insecure writer, the first thing I would tell you is, hey, you can't really mess this up. You can always make another draft. I don't care how long it's been since you wrote last. That doesn't really matter. You can't do something so bad that you have to just throw away your keyboard and never write another sentence again. You can feel discouraged. You can be burnt out. You can be overwhelmed by the state of the world. And you can say, I'm not a writer because this world doesn't have room for me, or this world is a threat to me, so I'm not writing as a result. That's your choice. I disagree with that choice. I think everybody's voice matters. I think especially if you are somebody who feels threatened and attacked by the world, you have an obligation to make sure you aren't silenced. But if you're new and insecure, the best thing you can do is understand that you can always get better at this, not because you're a failure, not because you have to be zero mistakes, but you can always improve and you can always find support, and you can't mess this up. And all those things that we talk about in terms of good writing don't exist and don't matter. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to write your thing. It doesn't matter how many readers you have. It doesn't matter how many views a page got on the internet. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, especially if you're new. No one's going to give a shit that on Tuesday, one person saw your thing, and on Wednesday, nobody saw it, but on Thursday, 3 people saw it. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Why? Because at the end of the week, 5 people have seen your thing. And that's 5 more than nothing. It's not a numbers thing. It's not you don't have to drive yourself to your metrics. You don't have to make it about that. You just need to do your best writing. Do your best. Not the best. Not force yourself to be perfect or else. But do your best. And then when you reach that inevitable point where you want to get better, you have resources that will actually help you get better, as opposed to just wishing things got better and then not actually getting there. So if you're new, get support. Ask for help. Be new. But also know that you can't mess it up. So it's okay to be new and ask questions. It's not a problem. You're not a burden. You're not a failure. We don't all hate you or something. You're just new. So it's our job to help you. We were all new once. Help new people. That's what we do. So just do your best every day, even if that's one word or a paragraph. We all want it to be more, but it is what it is. That's fine. Really, that's okay. That is exactly what I would tell a new and insecure writer. On we go. I answered 7. I answered 8. I answered 9. Sorry, I'm clicking the wrong buttons. 10. Isn't the end of a prologue always a cliffhanger? Yeah, kind of. It doesn't matter. But, yeah, let me push my glasses up here. Yes, I suppose technically it is. Okay. It doesn't. Really what this is talking about is there's something called the narrative gap. The narrative gap is the idea that in the beginning part of your thing, whether it's a movie, whether it's a TV show, whatever, or a book, you've got this prologue, you've got this opening. Usually in a TV show, it's right before the credit sequence. And stuff happens. Maybe it's an old case they're solving. Maybe it's the beginning of the new case of the week or whatever. But there's this segment of television where stuff happens. Characters do stuff. Things blow up. Action, whatever, dialogue. It's important. It's your show. You're watching it. And then, like, it reaches a natural conclusion for itself. You chase the bad guy, they find the body, whatever. And then it goes to credits. And all that momentum slows way the hell down. Because credits. We just sort of sit there and stare at them. And then we have to pick back up when the show starts, when the credits are over, when we come out of commercial break or whatever. That's the television media version of this. In text, it's the idea of, well, I have this prologue and it sets up something, and then I have to somehow like jump time forward 10,000 bajillion years so that our story starts. This is one of the problems with prologues. It sets up this unnatural gap where all the momentum and all the interest and all the engaging stuff that you spent however many pages setting up now has to kind of be parked off to the side so that you can go start your story. That's why, for a lot of people, they swear it's a prologue. They really just wrote chapter 1, and they can just carry the story forward. But yes, the end of a prologue is always a cliffhanger, even if it's not like a big, scary action scene or something. But yes, implied in the name of, implied in the construction, it's a cliffhanger because it creates suspense to carry us forward to the next thing. Good for you. Like, it doesn't really matter. But yes, the end of a prologue is a cliffhanger. On we go. Question number 11. Much like our question about an insecure new writer, how can I tell if I'm holding myself back? All right, so we're making a distinction between the people who are knowingly holding themselves back. Hi, I'm one of them. And the people who are doing it but not realizing they're doing it. That's fine. That's okay. It's okay to make that distinction. But how can you tell if you are? It's the amount of regret you feel. The amount of I wish. Oh, I wish I could do that differently. I wish it worked like that for me. I wish I wasn't like this. I wish I was like that. I'm glad you believe this. I'm glad that works for you. But for me, ... Anytime you do that, anything in that ballpark, you are holding yourself back, usually out of a fear that something worse will happen if you don't get it right. Oh, I can't work a bigger thing. I can't work a more complicated streaming setup because, then I might get it wrong and no one will see it and I'll be wasting my time. And there might be questions in chat and I might not see them. And oh my God, I shouldn't even stream at all if I can't get questions in chat. The whole point of a Q&A is to answer questions in chat. Yeah. It is. But the only way I'm going to figure out how to make all that stuff work is to do it. The only way you're going to write your book is to do it. You got to finish it. The only way it's going to get going is if you do it. It's not going to write itself. The only way you're going to get, readers, consumers, if you're selling your book, which you should be doing. But, the only way you're going to get that is if you finish it, if you sell it, if you put it out into the world. If you're afraid, fear is hard. It's real hard. It's big and scary and messy. And if you're letting that make most of the decisions for you, because, I'm afraid, so I'm not going to do whatever. I'm worried about this. I'm going to deal with it later. Oh, I'm afraid, so I'm not even going to bother. If you're letting fear make those decisions, you're holding yourself back. Now, I'm not saying you need to burn everything down and skip it all and just, become a new you overnight, because that's not how life works. But what you can do is take one of those things, just one, and be very scared and be very unsure, but try. So for instance, let's say you're writing and you don't know if the new idea you have in your head is any good. I don't know if that chapter makes sense. I don't know if that scene's a good idea. I don't know how I'm going to resolve this plot thing. Well, guess what the only way to do any of that stuff is? You got to sit down and write it. And you can be nervous and complaining about it the entire time. Oh, this sucks, isn't any good. But you still got to do it in order to find out. I don't know if dinner is going to taste bad. I won't know until I cook it, because right now it's just ingredients to frosting in my fridge. If you're holding yourself back, it's based on the amount of I wishes or rationalizations or excuses or explanations that you tell yourself or that you tell others to justify or make sense of why you're at where you're at. I'm not saying that some of that stuff is wrong. Yes, you are paralyzed by anxiety. You are working 2 jobs. You have no free time, and the kids are really loud, so obviously you can't write. Yep. Facts. But some of those factors are under your control. Did you know that you can write on whatever memo notes app you have on your phone while you're pooping? Did you know that while the kids are asleep, before you go put on that show you've watched 15 times for comfort, did you know that you could take 10 minutes and write something down? Just 10 minutes. You know that text message you spend like, I don't know how many minutes at night texting your 2 friends just to like complain about work? You know that if you cut that in half, you have a couple minutes, you could write a paragraph or a sentence. A lot of your fear is based on an assumption about how something is or how something could be. And in that assumption, there's not a lot of fact. There's a lot of like broad guessing. And one of the things you can do is test it, push back against it, challenge it. But do it small and do it in pieces, and you'll surprise yourself. I didn't think I could stream again. I figured I was done. I figured I'd just make, YouTube videos just mega infrequently, and I'd somehow cobble together a new business model and try not to starve. But no, I was scared. You can hear it in the last recording, and here I am trying again. Holding yourself back only hurts you. It's okay to be scared. It's less okay to be scared and not do the thing you want to do. Sometimes you just got to try. On we go. Question 12. If my work gets a lot of views, but no comments and no reviews, what can I do? Well, there's 2 things you can do. 1, you can ask people to leave reviews and comments. There's nothing wrong with that. It is critical in most algorithms that you get reviews, that it directly affects how your stuff is found in searches and advertised and promoted and all that. Reviews make a difference. How much of a difference? Depends on the platform we're talking about. And the exact specifics are kind of hand-wavy and magical because we don't entirely know. But you do need them. If your work is getting a lot of views, but nobody's engaging with it, and a lot, I should have put a lot of views in quotes, because a lot might be, 10 to somebody, and a lot might be 100 to somebody else. But if you're getting views and no comments or reviews, chances are, 1, people don't know that you want them to reply. For example, I spent a whole year writing a newsletter not thinking anybody had anything to say, so I never turned comments on, but then I did. And I found out that, in fact, people did have stuff to say. They just didn't have the awareness that I wanted them to. So you got to make it available to them. Oh, gee, thanks. And something as simple as, hey, did you know that if you're liking this, I would love a review? Thanks so much. Don't forget to, there's a reason why all the YouTubers say don't forget to like and subscribe, because it matters. Now, if you've been getting a lot of views, and even after asking humans for comments and reviews, you're getting just nothing, well, it's time to consider big picture. Maybe it's getting views but no engagement because there's room for improvement. Maybe we could polish the writing more. Maybe you could put it somewhere else. Maybe you need to market it more aggressively. Maybe you need to market it at all. Maybe you need to, leave the walled garden like we talked about in that previous question. If you're getting a lot of views but no traction, views but no responses, and you're already asking for them and you're already generating what you can marketing-wise, chances are it's a writing issue. And poking the writing with a stick and taking it apart and doing things like a writing group or asking for some help and stuff can make a difference, and someone will remark on it. Also, in a lot of these sort of situations, exchange is a really powerful currency. So, for instance, you leave a comment for somebody, can encourage them to reciprocate. Don't sleep on that. That's a significant thing. Because that way you're not just throwing your stuff out into the world, into the void, and then walking away, just whatever, like I'm yelling down a hole. Leave a review. Oh, I love this thing. This was really great. Cool. Thanks so much. Really glad I spent my, $2.99 on this thing. Totally worth it. Great lunch break. It doesn't take much to support somebody, right? Think about the number of times you've had somebody just give you a nice compliment and it's changed the whole frame of your afternoon. Oh, you look fantastic today. Oh, gee, thanks. That's cool. Small thing like that. Sometimes we're just waiting on somebody else to go first. Sometimes you got to be the one that goes first. So I will tell you this. 2 things. 1, take a look at the writing. Is there anything you can tweak? Can you get somebody to take a look at it, polish it, push it, poke it with a stick, question you about why you're doing the thing the way you're doing, what you're trying to get to, and how you can get there better? And 2, are you engaging with people so that they know it is okay to do the thing you want them to do? Sometimes you just got to tell them. I hope that's a good start. I hope those things turn around for you. But sometimes you just got to take some action for that. On we go. Last question. I'm writing a web novel. Cool. Editing is too expensive. What do I do? It's not. It's not expensive. There's a difference between something being expensive and you not having money. I'm going to try and make this not a capitalism thing. But I want to draw a distinction between I don't want to spend money and I'm afraid of the end result. Because if you're just cheap, well, then you're just cheap. There's not really a whole lot we can do about that. But if you're saying it's too expensive and that's sort of the cover for the real reason, that whole sentiment of yeah, but if I get this thing edited, somebody's going to point out this thing I've been doing wrong, and I've been doing it wrong this whole time and I didn't know, oh my God. Yeah, that happens. So let's be clear. Editing is not what happened to you in English class. It's a little bit like that in the sense that there's a human being looking at your stuff and there might be some words crossed out or some things written in or some questions asked. But it's not the same process as in class. It's not the same way. There's not that top-down power dynamic where you're trying to earn a grade. It's more like, hey, I'm somebody who's here to help you. And the better your editor, the more valuable their advice, the more valuable their help is to you. So why wouldn't you want to pay for that? Why wouldn't you want help? Chances are it's because you're afraid. Now, if you're looking at this and going, yeah, but I see the editors, I see the web pages, and they're this many cents per word. Yeah, it costs that much because we got to eat because it's a job. Would you go to a plumber and get upset that, oh my God, what do you mean it's going to be 3 turns of a screwdriver? I'm not paying you per screwdriver turn. No, you're paying a flat rate for a job. Editing is not expensive. Because there are things like payment plans. Did you know that? There are payment plans. Hi, I can't, I'm pretty sure given the rate on your website, it's going to be, $1,200 to edit my book. I don't have $1,200. I can do $40 a month. How can we make this happen? It's a tough, anxious email to write. But if you wrote that to me, I would tell you immediately, hey, let's not do $40 a month. Let's do $30 a month so that you have money in your pocket and I get $30 a month, and then we just map out how long it's going to take. If you go first, remember we talked about that in the previous question, if you go first, you will often be surprised by the result you get. If you're hiding from editing because you're afraid of what's going to be pointed out to you, you are misunderstanding what editing does. And then the money about it is just an excuse. Editing isn't here to make you feel bad. Editing isn't here to knock you down and break you and make you quit or break your will like some kind of bully or something. Editing's job is to remove static from broadcast. Editing's job is to make you a better writer. If your editor is not doing that well, meaning when you look at the thing that has been edited, you don't feel empowered. You don't feel like, oh, I have a better handle on how to explain this. Oh, thank you so much for pointing out that, oh, that's not how, this thing works or that thing works. That makes a difference. You need to find a better editor. Chances are most of the editors you're thinking of are only doing copy, which is the stuff that happens in English class. And chances are, especially if you're a new insecure writer, like the previous question, you probably need different help than just copy edit. You might need line editing, which is sort of like copy editing plus questions about your story, or developmental editing, which is what I do, which is, a way more comprehensive look at, let's take apart your whole story. Let's talk about your characters and your plot and your world building and go one piece at a time and show you how to build every single one of those better. It takes time. It's slower than just write whatever and just do whatever, because just write whatever, just do whatever is bad. Like it's sort of like trying to cut your own hair. You can do it. It's just not going to necessarily look the best, but it is possible. So, editing isn't necessarily expensive. People can be flexible. Payment plans can be arranged. Trade happens. I get paid in trade a lot. Not so much lately, but, over the last 2 or 3 years, I helped somebody write their college admission essay, and in exchange, they mowed my lawn several times. But hey, they got into college and I had a mowed lawn. Sweet deal. I'm not saying everybody needs to come mow my lawn, but trade is possible. Decent, equitable trade. Don't just say, well, I can draw you one picture and you can edit my book, because that is an unfair trade, because it's going to take me hours, days, and weeks to edit a book, and it'll take you hours and days maybe to draw me a picture. Got to kind of balance that out a little bit. If it's still too much and you're not sweating the fear, it's just plain old too expensive, what can I do? If we absolutely positively must have something done here, then my recommendation to you is, after you're done writing, I would love for you to go back through your work yourself and trim the following things. I want you to take a look at all the adverbs, and let's just do all the easy adverbs, all the things that end in ly. Go find all the words that end in ly and go look at them. Why are they in that sentence? Could we get a more effective, interesting, engaging sentence if we took out the word with the ly in it and we changed the verb or rewrote part of that sentence? Instead of John walked quickly, what if John ran? See what I mean? That's one thing you can do. Second thing you can do, go look for all the words. Go look for that. Look for all the that's. Do you positively, completely, and really, really need to keep all of them? Probably not. What else? I'd love for you to look for all the exclamation points. You don't need as many. How many do you need? Like 2 or 3. Tops. I promise. But in the interim, I would love for you, especially new insecure writers out there, to go find support, actual support, where you can go and ask questions and get help and make a big difference, where you can really get something significant together that's going to make you a better writer. Q&A, writing group, whatever. Find the tools and the people who will help you succeed. All right. Any other questions about anything? Anywhere? Anybody? Please bear in mind that I have no ability to look and see, so I am trusting other people to, shepherd these things. And it's okay if there are no questions. We can just go on and do what we got to do. Yes? No? All right. How about we get out of here then?
Work complete.
Thanks so much for being here. This was fun. I had a good time. Sorry about the chat. I'm working on it. We'll figure it out together. But thank you so much for the questions. Thanks for letting me talk about editing. Thanks for letting me talk about being an insecure writer. Thanks for letting me talk about adverbs and everything in between. I really appreciate it. If you want more of this, head over to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/John Adamus. You'll find lists of everything I've ever done there. And I don't know why it looped like that, but we'll fix that later. If you want me in your ears every day, just search for wherever you get podcasts. John helps you write better. And if you really want help, actual help from me for free, head over to johnhelpsyourwritebetter.com. I'd be more than happy to help you. I look forward to helping you. Thanks for being here. I will be in your eyes and in your ears in the very, very near future. Please take good care of yourself. Take care of somebody else. Love your people. Be safe. I will talk to you very, very soon. See ya.